possession. The Hebrew root for the name Nimrod actually means rebel, and some scholars think that the word Nimrod was actually just a derisive description of him and not his actual name. Either way, we know that Nimrod definitely lived up to his name. He founded Babel, which later became the heart of Babylon, and he was the leader of those who began construction on the Tower of Babel, which was a blatantly rebellious act against God, as they were doing the exact opposite of what God had commanded them to do. God told people to fill the earth, and instead they congregated together to build a tower to heaven, specifically to prevent them from filling the earth. In fact, the ancient historian Josephus says of Nimrod that he desired to build a tower so tall that should God decide to flood the earth again, that his tower would be too tall for the floodwaters to reach, and that Nimrod sought to avenge himself on God for destroying his forefathers. Nimrod also went on to found other heathen cities where he initiated worship to false gods. Additionally, most scholars believe that Nimrod and the character Gilgamesh from ancient Sumerian and Assyrian literature were the same person. These extra-biblical texts about Gilgamesh and Nimrod inform us that he was a vile man who opposed God and did his utmost to get people to forsake him. These extra-biblical texts also imply that Gilgamesh was 2/3 God and 1/3 human, and he was depicted as being a giant. So to put you in the scene, there was a supposed hybrid half-man, half-god giant king actively attempting to lead people away from God by leading them in open rebellion against God's commands. You could think of the whole Tower of Babel story as the very first God is dead movement. With all of this in mind, it kind of gives you a totally different outlook on the Tower of Babel story, doesn't it? And there's more. It's hard to pick up on in the English translation, but in the Hebrew, when it says that Nimrod began to be a mighty warrior, the language it uses there is actually the same language that Genesis 6 uses when it's talking about the offspring that came from the union of the sons of God with the daughters of Adam. In Genesis 6, the offspring were referred to as the Gibborim, the mighty men of renown. And in Genesis 10, it says that Nimrod began to be a Gibbor, or a mighty one, which is the same word from Genesis 6, and the fact that it says that Nimrod began to be a Gibbor implies that he was not born a Gibbor. It's obviously possible that the scripture could just be telling us that he grew into a mighty warrior, but I think that it's also possible that the scripture could be hinting at the idea that Nimrod became a Gibbor when he became demon-possessed as he raged against God. Obviously, that conclusion requires some speculation on my part, but seeing as how he was the first rebel king against God after the flood, and the first to initiate idol worship, and because the word used to describe him is the same word used in Genesis 6 concerning the union of the sons of God with the daughters of Adam, it does seem suspect to me.